Well, welcome everyone. We're very pleased to have you here. My name is Kristen Walker Painamia. I first want to let you know that we have interpretation for this event. It is at the bottom right-hand screen. You can choose your language. Tenemos interpretación para el evento que está en el botón de interpretación y escoge su idioma. We have English, French, and Spanish. My name is Kristen Walker Painamia, and I am chair of the IUCN Commission on Environment, Economics, and Social Policy, and we are hosting today's event. This is a series of dialogues that we are launching that will take place over the next several months, and we are very pleased to have this focus on a discussion on the impacts of COVID and climate change on Indigenous peoples. An extremely important issue and even more important and urgent as we look at what is happening around the world. I do want to let you know that we will be doing other topics looking at environmental defenders, spirituality, and we will keep circulating those dialogues as they come up through October, November, and December. I want to introduce, I'm going to pass this over to co-chairs of our theme on our specialist group on Indigenous Peoples, Customary, and Environmental Law and Human Rights, Pasang Doma Sherpa, Paul Kanyike Sena, and Yeshing Upan. They are the three co-chairs for this theme and have put together this event, and I'm going to hand it over to them to do the moderation and work with our speakers. But I thank you all for your participation, and I look forward to hearing from you all and the dialogue. Thank you so much. I believe it goes to Pasang now.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you very much for your welcoming remarks and also your encouraging message that this is very important event and is a part of one of the dialogue of the IUCN on the especially this is a program organized from our special group of Indigenous peoples on the customary laws and environmental and human rights body of the on the Commission on the Environmental, Economic, Social Policy of IUCN, where Christian Walker is our chair, and me, one of the co-chair, along with my two friends, to co-chair, Kaninke and Yeshin. Please wave your hands if you are there. Kaninke, okay, yeah, I think you'll be seeing later on when they speak. So this is very important for all of us, especially you'll be wondering what we have been doing there. This is a very special group focusing on Indigenous peoples' issues and concerns, especially understanding more on depth how we can promote Indigenous knowledge and cultural practices and our value system that has contributed for climate change resilience, at the same time for sustainable management of the resources, biodiversity and ecosystem. This is very important that we all are aware the fact that the role and contribution of Indigenous peoples, and also this commission, the special group on Indigenous peoples on the customary laws and environmental and human rights group have been working also on a resource. The role of Indigenous people on the role of Indigenous people through our customary practices and governance system for the contribution for the climate change resilience. We have been, our research is going on in Nepal, Guatemala, and Kenya. We are really hopeful to have our publication to be shared in the World Congress. Hopefully it will be fixed soon because of the COVID, it's been kept on postponing. But once we have a publication, we'll be happy to share even virtually once it's been published, because this is very, very important for all of us, because we all are aware that role and Indigenous people's contribution for biodiversity as we are already aware that the legal recognition of indigenous people customary institution very, very important. The World Bank's report already also shows that 10% of the customarily recognized, legally recognized indigenous people territories contributing for 80% of the biodiversity, 25% of the carbon stock in the territories, and as well as almost half of the lands in 46 countries around the world. With the recent report of the RRI shows like 3.15 billion hectares of lands been contributed, claimed by the indigenous people and local communities. So with this one, 3 billion hectares of lands has been contributing of the 110 billion tons of the carbon above the ground. So this already shows that how role and indigenous peoples could play, given the fact that if our rights are ensured, if our land tenure security are there, and if our customary institution and governance system and our traditional livelihoods are respected, promoted, and recognized. But the problem is throughout the history of developments in the name of the education or developments or any kind of initiation, our values, our knowledge, our practices has been kept on undermining throughout the history, whether it's a developed country or developing country or any part of the world. So the consequence of the situation that we are facing on sustainability of the natural resources, climate crisis, and all this kind of turmoil. So now the business as usual cannot take place. We need to do something, and we need to reflect back. And this is what we all are here for. That we need to think about it. We need to reflect back to that the business as usual will not work. The paradigm shift need to be done, and transformative change need to be taken. So that for that one, we need indigenous people's voice, local communities' voice, and women's voice to be heard at the policymakers, lawmakers, for the effective implementation of the relevant policy and program that would support, recognize, and enhance our customary governance system, our traditional livelihoods, so that our future generation can continue and protect and promote and for the healthy and soothing environment for all of us to live in. So I would like to thank you all the panelists, all the speakers here. Once again, I would like to welcome on behalf of our co-chairs of the CEESP, of the CEESP of IUCN. We have to pronounce very correctly. I'm really thankful that all our speakers have accepted our invitation. This is our forum, and this is the forum that we need to exchange our knowledge and also share our values to be heard by the policymakers, lawmakers, and the concerned stakeholders, because this is a time that we need to act, and for that act we need to join hands together in all regions. And we are so glad that we could able to have this dialogue representing our brothers and sisters around the world, from Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And I'm really, really thankful all our panel speakers for your valuable time. I know you are very, very busy, but you have given your priority for this forum, because this is our forum. This is the forum that we want to continue by our next generation. The knowledge we have shared is very important, valuable, because it needs to be continued throughout our next generation. And for that one, we need to play a very, very important role, a very good foundation, so that our future generation can take a step in to move ahead with the hope and for the prosperous and sustainability future. So with this one, and I also would like to welcome all our participants, and thank you very much. Numbers are increasing, and I'm sure I have already got the message that many friends have also shown their interest to join this event, because this is our events, and this is the events that we need to have all your presence and one. So and with this one now I would like to today we'll have six panel speakers, and So all the panel speakers we have here will highlight the most important part, the impacts of climate change on the indigenous people, and as well as the impacts of the COVID-19, and also the main highlight the issues, and then we can move ahead. So the first speaker we have here is our sister, Hindu Omar. She's from Chad. She's the president of the Association of Indigenous Women and People of Chad, and also member of the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous People Issues, also the member of the Facility Working Group of Local Communities and Indigenous Peoples of the UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. But she has been engaged, she has been there in different levels of from global, national to local. I would like to welcome my sister Hindu for your for your important and very thoughtful remark, sharing your experience and how you have been the impacts of the climate change and the COVID and the way forward. Thank you so much, and the floor is yours. Yeah, over to you, Hindu.
Thank you very much, Sister Pasang. Thank you for involving me and putting me in the panel that you are co-chairing. Hi, everyone. It's really a great pleasure to be with all of you and seeing all the familiar faces. I hope you are all safe in your families and communities. So as Pasang said, I am coming from Chad. I'm coming from Sahel regions, from an indigenous communities that call it Mbororo pastoralist. And in my peoples, we are living across 5 or 6 countries: Chad, Cameroon, Nigeria, Central African Republic. So that means we are pastoralists, but we are also nomadic in the way of life that we are having. So without taking the borders that established since 1960, just 60 years ago, so that means our peoples are still in our traditional way of living in traditional land. And now with that, our life and livelihood depend from the environment, depend from the rainfall, and we're always following the rain to find water and pastures. And with the climate change impact, environmental degradation, it makes our life in a most vulnerable and very critical because of the loss of all the different ecosystems that we have. So with the COVID-19, who is the topic of this agenda, so when it started, the first challenge for us was the information. Even the people who are in the town, you have like many information, like 10 decisions that coming every day from the ministries, from the hospital, from the direction, from the presidency, from everywhere. So all the information that coming out are the new decisions to say don't do that or do that or stop this one or start this one. They are so contradictory. They are not well coordinated because there was not clear information. And those information are given only in a national language, which is French or Arabic, that our national languages in Chad. And they are passed through TV, radio, or maybe social media. But at the community, there was not coverage of the TV or radio or social medias. So the information are not reaching to the communities. Even for those who have access to those information facilities, the language are become a blockage for them because it is not in the mother tongue and people speak only the mother tongue. So that have been the first big challenge for all of us to understand what is happening, which kind of sickness that it is. So for us, it's like having an information every day, calling the community chief is saying like, oh, there is this information. And then the next day you say like, no, it's not that information. Because if you didn't give them the information, they will be the victim. If you give them the information, again, they are the victim. So it was really very challenging. And then the second challenge was when they established the social distances, washing their hands, or locking down. So when the lockdown in all the communities, they do not understand why they cannot go to the market, because we do not have a fridge where we can put our food for 1 week or 2 weeks, and there are not a supermarket in the communities. They depend from the daily exchange of the product. So when you don't have fridge and then you have a milk, you cannot save it for 1 week. You just have it today, you transform it by tomorrow, and you sell it to the market and buy onion, cereal, and salt, and take it back home. And every day you do this process, and it is the same for the fishermen and for the agriculture peoples. So when the lockdown the market, for us, it's impact directly our food system. And then the food insecurity start becoming a big issue in all the communities. And it's become also a big issue for the entire country, because 3 weeks ago, when 4 weeks maybe, when the World Food Program map on hunger come out, chart, it's the one in the middle, it's a dark red, increased by more than 35% of the food insecurity, just because of COVID, that make all the people in huge vulnerabilities. And when it's come to the social distances and cleaning the hands or gels, so the community who do not have access to the clean water to drink, they cannot get access to wash them hands every hours or every 2 hours with the soap. So it's become another kind of challenge that we have. The linkages with the environment is, while we are transboundary communities and following the rain, so climate change do not respect the COVID, or there is no social distance with climate change. There is no mask with climate change. There is no lockdown. So communities was locked down in one country, the frontiers was closed, then they cannot cross the border with the cattle, and then the season started. That give a big impact on the environment and on the climate change, and the conflict among communities to access the resources that left becoming a huge issue. And when the lockdown, the frontiers, the lockdown also the regional level inside the same country. And then for us, it was really not possible, because the ecosystem are not adapted to the sedentarized communities or to manage the natural resources. And that also have the impact on the national park, because we have transboundary national park. And when the lock it down, also people cannot get access to it. So for us, what we did, I've finished my presentation on this one. What we did, in my organization, we try to have some funding, and we work with our organization, like IPAC also, I see Kaninka is there. So we work to have a strategy of how we can reach out to the communities. And then we give them the mask for the man who have to go out absolutely from the communities in order to protect themselves. And we give them some soap. When someone have to come to the communities, they have to wash them hand with the soap, and they have to wear the mask. And we invest also in the food security for a short time. So for the most vulnerable peoples, that we give them the cereal that they need in order to keep the families alive by the time that the market opens. But for the environmental issues, it was a big disaster, because the government do not have a coordination on the policies between the countries or in the same country. So you cannot move, and as organization, we couldn't also talk to them, because they're always locking down everything that they are doing. And then we have the consequence on this food insecurity. And at the end of the day, now we have a big flood that's going on around all the Sahel. Everything is flooding. So my worry, it's now the consequence of this COVID, who will increase again the climate change impact in all our communities. And who are the front line is still the same peoples, the indigenous communities, and especially the women who have them life depend from the environment, and who collect the food, the water, the food from the land to feed them families. So those are the big gap. So what we can do, I think IUCN can help to reestablish the land right for indigenous peoples. I know that there was a long time ago in study on the pastoralist land, but it is not enough. It is to help in the time of crisis, like climate change, biodiversity loss, or COVID, or another pandemic, how the management of the better land will be for all the peoples, and how also the transboundary park or access or management of indigenous peoples with our own customary land and traditional knowledge can be respected. Thank you so much, dear Pasang.
Thank you so much, dear Hindu, for your wonderful experience, sharing your wonderful experience on the ground, and also congratulations and for your efforts, trying to heal the pain of our communities on the ground who are already struggling with the language problems and not aware about the COVID, and and we have tried to heal the pain at least. However, you are right that we are not free from not only COVID, but also from the impacts of climate change, as you have already highlighted, that the floods. So, the most importance of ensuring the land tenure security and customary practices, we really hope and we hope for our group also to join this the mission, the vision, the objectives for all of us to fulfill in our coming days, and join hands together, despite the levels of either regions or it's either communities. But we all need to, as indigenous peoples, and we need to join hands. And thank you very much. That was really, really the big message that how our indigenous people already been facing the challenges of COVID-19 as well as pandemic. Because I would like to maybe if you have any short question, very immediate question, because as I got the information from Hindu, she has another schedule, so she will not be there till the end of the. She may not be able to be there until the end of our opening a discussion. So before losing this opportunity, if any of you have any quick queries. And before I go to the next panel, do we see any queries? Okay. Okay, I don't see any, but I hope Hindu can stay a little longer so that she could also hear the experiences of the indigenous people from different part of the world, and also see how they are, how they can be helpful each other's understanding and way out for helping the peoples who are already, suffering due to the impacts of COVID as well as the climate change. Now I would like to go to our young leader from Kenya, Mark Larry Letulo from Kenya. He's a Maasai from Nanu. He's the vice chairperson of the Ololulunga, sorry, Elites Youth Organization. I'm so sorry for my pronunciation. My pronunciation is very bad. Yeah, but I'm so glad that most of our panels are very young, because our future lies on the hands of young, and then we need the more young spirit to move ahead. So I'm so glad to welcome Mark Larry. Now floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My name is Mark Larry Letolo. I come from Kenya, a place called Narok, Lolulunga. The one that you didn't know how to mention is a Lolulunga. We are the Maasai people, the natives from Kenya. We love you, and it's a pleasure to have all of you on board, the fellow panelists, all accomplished people, and the people who join us. I'm very sorry because I'm in Accra, as you can see. I thought I'll beat time traveling to somewhere to stop, but because the time came, we had to stop everything and do this. It's so humbling to have indigenous people together. And on that note, I would like to pose a very simple question and ask all of us, what will happen if COVID never ended? what will happen if the world never healed out of COVID. Which people will have survived? Is it the city people, indigenous people, mountain people who will have survived? Now, in my presentation about the Kenyan part and what we went through since the COVID came, just a quick fact. Kenya is a country in the Eastern Africa side, and we are close to 47 million right now. And we have more than 25% of the people here are pastoralists, and we have more than 10 tribes being indigenous. And one of the most common indigenous people we have is they live in native places where we got it, the ancestral land and everything. And some of the key challenges that we face is the challenge being faced by many indigenous people around the world is the issue to do with lands, the issues to do with the changing livelihoods and livestock grazing, the issue with health and so and so. I would just like to mention how COVID-19 in particular affected us in Kenya. Now, first of all, no one was ever prepared for the COVID, so it all hit us as a surprise. And for the Maasai people, we got two things in terms of, I'll be speaking on 4 issues. One will be health, second is education, third I'll be talking about agriculture, and lastly is the institutions that are available to us in terms of education, in terms of rights. So when you talk about health, we had the issue about health. We live in remote areas in Kenya. We did not have access to the health services on time, and it became a challenge for most of the people to get the information. And then the issue that the previous panelist was talking about, the issue of sanitation and the issue of getting the support from the government to the remote areas was not easy. So that brought in a challenge that we saw, and it was difficult for us to now come into the community, train community of how to use the soap water, how to keep distance, how to avoid the meetings and all of that. But I thank God we went through it. But again, there is something I wanted to mention on the same thing about health. We discovered that during the COVID-19 season, all our women delivered at homes, close to maybe 5% delivered in the hospitals. We have the community midwives, they really assisted, and some of that knowledge was never tapped into by the governments. They never saw the midwifery, the people in the local villages as having been playing a very major role, and it's actually brought up that the local communities, the indigenous people can actually have information or knowledge that most of the countries and governments can be able to use. I'm not saying that it's good to use the traditional people completely, but it's good just to merge a little. And then we had the issue of, for us, we have herbs, the herbs that we use to treat ourselves. So when COVID came, a lot of people went to their homes. There was a lockdown, and then most of our people were taking the indigenous herbs, the herbs here. We slaughtered a lot of bulls, we drank soup, and I'm actually even more stronger than before COVID hit us. So it's just part of what we are trying to do as an indigenous people of this side. So most of the old people, the ones that were labeled as the old age, were taken to those, we call them Milipuli in Kimasai. You just seclude yourselves, and then you be able to take the soup. In terms of education, we were greatly affected. We live in remote places. We don't have a lot of electricity. So our kids learning through online became a very big challenge. So it's still a challenge up to date. We did not get much of the education because the Kenyan government actually tried. They were running the online channels, trying to educate our kids. But again, we got a challenge because from our side, we didn't have the connection and technology and and the facility. So it's still a key challenge to us, having technology in remote areas, maybe solar panels that will really assist us to go in a long way. In agriculture, we were affected negatively because there was a lockdown, our markets were closed, our people could not access markets, we could not sell our livestock, and so it was practically a standstill. So in the issue of markets, most of us as the native Maasais, we do a lot of livestock business. We buy and sell livestock for a living. And when you are affected, a lot of families were affected, they could not be able to get the income from those markets, but eventually the markets were open. And we are trying, though we're not yet there, but we are trying. Then when we go to the issue of the last issue of our judicial system, the one that we need to strengthen our institutions here. I would like just to give a quick example. When you usually go to court, we bow down to the judges, then we enter the court, right? In our native language, we greet people, especially they hold your head. So we know that system of having respect. And here we have a lot of barasas. So during the COVID-19 season, we had a lot of barasas, and we were able to talk to the people who were around, but the only challenge we had was capacity from the institutions, strengthening the existing facilities which were there. So apart from that, we saw it best that the organization should strengthen the existing systems, especially on the grassroots, to deal with cases which do not necessarily need to be handled in the court levels. And as I finish on that, now that the world here in Kenya, the COVID-19 issues has gone down, we are trying to reopen schools, we are trying to get back to economy, but we still have the numbers being high. We are just trying to see if there will be a way of having a precaution for anything like this in the future for the indigenous people, because we are not certain if this will be the last. So when we get out of this, we really need to rethink our normal way of life and see how we can be able to save our people. And to the brighter side, I'm glad to report that from our villages, we practically lost we didn't lose anyone to COVID-19 from my own village. We thank God for that. And we pray for the country and to all people who are affected. So yeah, I think I'll leave it at that, so that if there'll be any more engagement or questions later, then I'll be comfortable to handle them.
Thank you so much, Mark, for sharing your valuable experience and your own knowledge, how important the indigenous traditional practices and as well as the herbs that has healed and make you more stronger than before. So this is the strength that if we depend on our our knowledge system, the resources we have in our community, and if we have a build on that one, that would be more sustainable. And now I let's hope like even the role of the midwife during the COVID, supporting each others would be really will be also acknowledged from the governments in Kenya, that how indigenous people are even dealing with the COVID, right? Just not losing life is very good example, but also this is very very good example to show government that how indigenous peoples are more self-sustained in terms of through their traditional knowledge and practice, and also the herbs they have been using for generation. And with this one, I would like to thank you once more, Mark, for bringing your very, very valuable experience from the ground. we'll just continue our panel presentation, and at the end we'll open the floor. So those now I also welcome all participants. Now we have 60 participants, and it's increasing numbers. I once again welcome all participants, and if you have any queries, please hold on. Unless you have very burning issues, you can just put your question in the question answers box. If not, and then let's hold on till we finish all the panel speakers. With this one, now I would like to thank both our sister and brothers from Chad and Kenya. Now I would like to go to Asia, from Africa to Asia. We move to Asia now. Let's hear our the experience also, how the Asian indigenous people in Asia, how is the situation, how they are affected from the climate change and COVID, and how they are dealing with, and their message forward. So we have another young speakers. Our more young voice has also encouraged us, strengthened us, and energized us to move ahead now. We have our next speaker, Mr. Phanom Thano from Thailand. He's a current indigenous group from the current indigenous peoples group. And he's in charge of the communication and advocacy at Indigenous Peoples Foundation for Education and Environment. Now I would like to hand over to Phanom Thano for your presentation, for your sharing your experience on the grounds. Over to you, Phanom.
Thank you very much, Pasang. Good morning, good afternoon to the participants joining from the other side of the world, and good evening from Thailand. Now it is 9:30 p.m. here in Thailand. I have my screen, just very short screen to share. Can I? Okay. Okay. I would just first of all thank you very much, Pasang, for and IUCN to giving me this opportunity to share our story and situation about the impacts of COVID-19 and the climate change on indigenous people in Thailand. The story I will share right now is all about happened to indigenous people mainly in Thailand. Well, first of all, allow me to give a brief background about indigenous people in Thailand. In our country, we have there are more than 70 languages spoken by different ethnic groups, but of these, only 38 groups define themselves as indigenous people. And our people here, I think, quite similar to the other country that the two previous speakers has presented. So we rely on natural resources, and particular with the forest, and we have our good knowledge and resources management skill based on our traditional knowledge, and this knowledge has been passed down from generation to generation until our generation, like my generation. However, we also face kind of major challenges, particularly on the lack of official recognition of the rights of indigenous people, particularly the rights to land and resources, rights to access to the cultural-based education, and etc. And some of you might already know that in Thailand, the government did not recognize indigenous people, but the term they used to define them is ethnic group. Okay, coming to the impacts of COVID-19 and the climate change on indigenous people, I would like first to start on about the impact from the climate change. In Thailand or in Asia, I think quite similar here, particularly in the Mekong Greater regions, we face the challenge on unseasonal raining, so the rain doesn't come in the proper times. This really affect our agriculture's calendar. Sometimes it's, for example, the rain supposed to arrive around May, but if it doesn't come, many rotational rice field when dried. And the drought situations, the water is getting decreasing and disappear in every year. Many stream, many river went permanently dried out in the community living in the mountain area. But in this presentation, I would like to focus more on the impact of the COVID-19. Talk about during the pandemic situations, we can divide it, classify it into two groups of indigenous people in the country. The first group are indigenous working in the urban city. Some of them come to the city for daily wage or to be a laborer in the city, but some of them have to come to the city because they have no land to farm, they have no place to make a living in the forest due to the displacement by the policies, right? Particularly the policy regarding to the national park and forest laws. So this group is the most vulnerable group during the COVID situations. They face kind of food insecure, food shortage. Now they have no food to consume. They have no money to buy stuff for their kids, raise their family in the city. It is very very poor at that time. And the second group, indigenous people who live in their own communities, who still can have their lands and have their knowledge to manage the forest. The situation is very important, very different between the two groups. The second group who still have their land and have knowledge to do, for example, who have rotational farming, they can make, the COVID is just another situation. They can totally rely on the natural resources that exist in their community for even 3 months, 4 months, that they say that very fine for them. And what did we do during the pandemic situations? There were key activity carried out by indigenous people. The first activity is we conduct a village closure ceremony. This means that this ceremony hasn't been practiced in Thailand for over 70 years. So this is the first time after 70 years that indigenous people revive this ceremony, the traditional ceremony, which is they close the village even before the government announced curfews or announced restrictions of traveling, but they start to close their community once they heard about the news of a new coming virus. This activity conduct based on their traditional knowledge and their traditional knowledge and their wisdom in order to prevent the spread of the virus, mostly done by the current indigenous community. The second one, they open up the network of indigenous people in Thailand, which is an umbrella organization of indigenous people in Thailand, consists of over than 85 group and organization altogether. They open up a donation center to receive a donation, either food or cash or any other material, and then provide a food relief to indigenous community. For example, they opened it just around 2 or 3 months, but they receive a key donation from around 27 donators. Let's say that it can be some of them from individual, from organization, and also from communities. We receive agriculture crops, kind of tomatoes from an Omgoi district, which is one of the most rural area, around 3 tons, 3,000 kilograms of tomato to donate to provide a food relief with the people living in the urban city. And then this food we distributed in to 45 communities in the northern parts mostly who need it. And the third one, we organize we call it the food exchange activity. Indigenous people, as I mentioned earlier, we live across the country, right? Including indigenous people living in the sea, in the southern part, which is the sea area. But that time they can escape from the island to buy things or to go fishing as usual. And also current people in the northern part, they can't go out from their community because a sign of handling with the COVID-19. That time was a peak time of the forest fire that they have to conduct a patrol all day and night to survey the wildfire. So that means they have no time to gather food from the forest. So they initiate an activity called the food exchange activity. The rice, 8 tons, 8,000 kilograms of rice from the northern parts has been transported to the south in order to exchange or to trade with 1,000 kilograms of fish from the sea. That's how we help each other by indigenous people to indigenous people in Thailand. And of course, the situation of COVID, despite many people died and we lost economic falls, but it can prove that it can prove something to indigenous people. For those communities, as I said earlier, during the pandemic, some communities decided to shut down their village. And for 3 months, most of them shut down for 3 months with totally no contact with the outsider. But they can completely rely on natural resources in their territories. That means that if the governments or the authorities allow us to access and manage and fully manage natural resources in our community based on our traditional knowledge, we can make a living, we can have very high resilience competency in our community. Therefore, it's come to our recommendation. In short term, I think this kind of good practices that I mentioned earlier about food exchange, about helping each other from community to community, from people to people without waiting for help from the government or the other sector. This kind of practices must be carried forward and with a better support from the government or non-governmental organization in order to sustain this kind of activities. But in long term, as I mentioned at the first slide, that our rights hasn't been fully recognized or not officially recognized. These must be recognized in as soon as possible, including just not to recognize that, okay, there is indigenous people in the country, but also recognize their traditional knowledge and livelihood. Yeah, I think that's all. I would like to end here. If you need any additional information, you can take this slide from the host, I guess. Thank you very much. I think Pasang, can you please on your mic, please?
Okay, sorry. Thanks for Nam. Thank you for Nam. Thank you for Nam. I was just I was explaining like thank you for bringing all of us to Thailand, and also the ground reality of how indigenous peoples, like as you say, 38 indigenous group peoples have been dealing with COVID. A very interesting point you have already indicated that given the fact that recognition of our land tenure security, and given the fact of continuation of our traditional livelihoods and ownership of our lands, they even the like COVID would not have any will not really impacts on their continuation of their livelihoods, as you have clearly. So the indigenous people are affected if the land security are not there, right? So the indigenous people who are in the city with no land tenure security in their home and migrated to the city with no lands at home are the most impacts of the COVID-19, and because of the food insecurity, as you have really highlighted. And this is experience actually been seen around the world. So so your last recommendation of recognition of indigenous peoples customary laws and our traditional values, and even the indigenous people's rights and land tenure security is a very, very important to deal with the climate change, or whether with the COVID or any kind of circumstances, so that indigenous people live with a dignity and with a respect. And it's not kind of like seeing as seeing like low, or but being proud of being indigenous peoples. That is the most important. But for that one, the land tenure security for our traditional knowledge need to be respected in the laws and policy that you have highlighted. And another part is like the best practices of indigenous people, like exchanging, like supporting each other, the efforts of indigenous peoples, collecting, helping each others, even like opening the centers for supporting each others, and also even the like reviving of the barter system of exchanging fish and rice. I think that is one of the best sustainable way of survival. I think this is the one that our state parties or government or stakeholders need to understand how important the role and indigenous people have been carrying on. Thank you very much, Phanam. And now I would like to go to Nepal. We have next speakers, Kamala Thapa Magar from Nepal. She's an indigenous women leaders, former executive director of Nepal Indigenous Women Federation, and also she's also linked with a different forestry groups, I believe, and then also other organization. But she has been playing a very important role in the context of Nepal for the indigenous women movements, and has been working for indigenous women's in the past more than 10 years. So now I would like to hand over to Kamala Thapa for your presentation. Over to you, Kamala.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Pasang, for the opportunity to share some of the issues and concerns of indigenous peoples related with the COVID-19 and climate change and indigenous peoples from Nepal. And I would like to thank IUCN for the remarkable platform to bring indigenous peoples' voice in the global platform, so that from the global also indigenous people's concerns from the its individual countries has facing the problem by the indigenous people in the name of pandemic and the climate change. I would like to share my screen. Just a minute. Hello?
Yes, we see your screen. Maybe you can do the full.
Okay.
I think you need to go down. You go down and then you just put the. No, I think you go here. Down, Kamala. Tolo जानुपर्छ तल तल गएर अनि राइटमा हेर्नु त त्यहाँ दुईटा चारवटा बटनको छेउमा. You just click here. You need to go down here, other side. You need to go down bottom.
Okay, yeah. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. So my presentations is related with the COVID. Yeah. Okay. COVID-19 and indigenous peoples that we indigenous peoples from Nepal is facing, like the COVID-19 is high risks on the indigenous peoples because of the discrimination, social exclusion, land dispositions, militarization, because our lands and territories, customary lands are grabbing by the name of aggressive development. You can see here the pictures that recently within this COVID-19 pandemic and the semi-lockdown period, our indigenous peoples who are going for the cultivation of rice in their own customary land, but the government has a protest, like they threaten our indigenous peoples from their peoples by beating and spreading the tear gases. So this is the situation that within this pandemic also, that our indigenous people are facing challenges, and also deprived from safety health measures, because government is not bringing the safety measures in the ground level, and we are deprived from these safety measures in the local areas, like in the village area. Our indigenous people are unknown about the COVID-19 and its conditions and its situations. Increased gender-based violence, including rape cases. There are lots of rape cases in within this pandemic period. We have our indigenous women are facing rape cases, and high impact of climate disasters. And Nepal, now we are facing a monsoon period, and we have lots of heavy rainfalls here. And through this heavy rainfalls in the hilly region, there is lots of landslide, and those landslides occur in indigenous people's territory, because we indigenous peoples live in the vulnerable geographical areas. And indigenous peoples who are facing the displacement from their customary land, because our indigenous peoples, like indigenous peoples settle in the nearby the national parks and protected areas. And this time also our peoples were evicted from that national parks by threatening and by burning their houses. Lack of access to information on COVID-19 in own language, because in Nepal we speak more than 120 languages. And in Nepal, like 59 indigenous people are legally recognized as indigenous peoples in Nepal. And we speak our own languages, mother languages, but we don't, many indigenous people from the village area, they don't understand national language. So government is giving a COVID-19 information, awareness information, but our indigenous people are deprived from that information, because not understanding the national languages. And due to the structural inequalities, we are not getting any benefited that government is giving in the name of COVID-19 preparedness and safety measures. So, like related with the climate change and indigenous peoples and COVID-19, like due to the geographical and location of living in the indigenous peoples most vulnerable to climate change, because they're still on the front line of physical effect of climate-driven extreme weather. Like indigenous people, fundamental rights to life, health, water, food, adequate standard of living, land, culture, and traditional are undermined both by the climate crisis and by the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is the situation that COVID-19 and climate change is impacting directly in the food system, water sanitation, and health of indigenous people. So right to land is our fundamental rights. But indigenous people's customary lands are changing in the different form, like the government is increasing the economic development. But our indigenous peoples are facing challenges because of not having free, prior, and informed consent while introducing such aggressive development projects in our customary lands, like hydropowers, national parks, fast-track roads constructions, protected areas, and we don't have access to our own resources. Like we are criminalizing it within our own land. Recently, like in National Park, Chiton National Park is the UNESCO Heritage National Park of Nepal. Recently, one Chepang highly marginalized indigenous young boy was killed when he went to have fishing in their own river. So in that national park, the army has beaten him and he was dead. So still we are fighting for his justice, but still his family is not getting justice. This is the discrimination that we are facing in the ground. We are charging as a criminal, suspecting illegal poachers. When we go to the forest to collect firewood, collect vegetables, wild vegetables, but we are charged as illegal poachers. Our indigenous women are facing challenges of harassment, sexual abuse by the armies in the national parks. They were beaten, they were harassed, and some were also still in the very, very poor health conditions after getting mental psycho torture by the armies in the national park areas. Illegal land secured during lockdowns, among other, has affected indigenous people's right. Like case of Kokona village, the historic place of indigenous Newar peoples in Kathmandu, is going to be a UNESCO heritage village, but that village now is going to be vanished because of the aggressive fast-track road expansion project. Within this pandemic also, our indigenous women could not cultivate rice in their own land due to the fast-track projects. They don't have any access, they don't have any alternative livelihood. They are totally depend on the agriculture. They lose their lands. Still they are fighting for their lands. The fast track was established without free, prior and informed consent by the government and by the company. Chiton National Park, the Chepang house, the very long generation, they live in the core area of national park. In the pandemic time, their houses were burned. They were evicted from that from their land with the forceful introducing armies. So this is the things that indigenous people are facing within this pandemic also. The government, so the government has to be sensitive within this pandemic time, but they are not sensitized on these situations.
Kamala, can we just move ahead?
Yeah. So we said that no, we are the custodians of land, territories, and resources, and knowledge holders. We contribute to existing sustainability of earth, but national laws and policies, discriminated laws and policies, has stopped to continue our traditional knowledges, customary practices in our own customary lands. And Nepal has recognized lots of international human rights, including ILO 169 and UNDRIP, but it is not implemented in the ground. That's why how we are facing the challenges. And for this, we have a way forward. We are asking for the self-determination, full and meaningful participation in every decision making in all level, because we are not in the decision making level. recognize indigenous data processing methodology, because we are producing our own data system with the navigator process and CBMIS system, but it has not been recognized. So we are asking for to recognize this institutional, customary institutional practice, and we are asking for the free, prior, and informed consent to protect collective ways of life and collective right of indigenous peoples. So protect and replicate indigenous people's knowledge and practices. So this also, we are asking for the strong network of indigenous people in global, regional, and national to local level. So this is the way forward. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kamala. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry for pushing you ahead, because just considering time, we have just 20 minutes left. However, let's try to be a little bit flexible of adjusting 10 to 15 minutes if if our discussion really continues, and we understand the situation, the impacts of the COVID for not being able to recognize our land tenure security and the customary laws and practices, even in the name of the development and conservation and national park, in the name of different initiatives that has how its impacts, and even the death of the indigenous community, just because he just wanted to continue his traditional livelihoods, just fishing. So this example, and also the examples of the coconut you have already presented, that already shows how indigenous peoples in our country is struggling, and how important it is to have a recognition of our land tenure security, for them to live with the dignity and respect. With the further delay, thank you very much, Kamala, for presenting and highlighting the very important situation in the context of Nepal. Now I would like to go from Nepal to Latin America. We have our next speakers. So we have our next speakers from Guatemala. We have Ramiro Baldwin, is Maya Kakchikel. My apology if I pronounce wrong. The executive director of STOLS, co-chair of International Indigenous People Forum on Biodiversity, Indigenous People representatives in the National Council on Climate Change, and also the member of the Guatemala Indigenous Peoples Roundtable on Climate Change. He's also the member of the Central American Indigenous Council, focal point of traditional knowledge of indigenous peoples in Guatemala for the conservation of biological diversity, member of IUCN World Council, and consultant on natural resource and indigenous people. Thank you very much, Ramiro. We would like to welcome you, and thank you very much for sparing your time to be our speakers. Your experience, your ground, your knowledge and experience is very valuable for our panel. Over to you, Ramiro.
Gracias. Reciban un saludo desde Tierras Mayas de Guatemala. Voy a hablar en español. Para iniciar, quiero agradecer por la invitación para participar en este diálogo sobre impactos de COVID y el cambio climático en los pueblos indígenas. Al mismo tiempo, quiero brindar un saludo a la Comisión de Política Económica, Social y Ambiental CEESP, particularmente a nuestra presidenta Cristel y a las copresidentas, por ser los anfitriones de este importante evento, a los hermanos y hermanas que han expuesto y que van a exponer, al mismo de recordar a cada uno de los hombres y mujeres que han pasado a la dimensión de los abuelos, como víctimas de esta pandemia que hoy enfrentamos. Quiero pedir un saludo, quiero pedir un minuto de reflexión cada uno de nosotros, porque se han ido muchos hermanos, muchos líderes y muchos dirigentes a raíz de eso. Hoy el calendario maya marca el día Ish, el día de la Madre Tierra, el nahual de los centros y lugares sagrados, el día de las montañas. Hoy es el día del jaguar. y es importante hacer este evento el día de hoy, y no es coincidencia porque estamos hablando de la madre naturaleza. Es importante resaltar que alrededor de 70 millones de personas indígenas conviven con los bosques, aunque solo representamos el 5% de la población mundial, ocupamos el 22% de la superficie de la Tierra y conservamos gran cantidad de biodiversidad del planeta. El 80% de la biodiversidad está en territorios indígenas. Por consiguiente, nuestro papel reviste particular importancia tanto para la gestión sostenible de los recursos naturales como para la conservación del medio ambiente y la biodiversidad, que son esenciales para luchar contra el cambio climático en estos momentos. Actualmente el mundo está enfrentando grandes problemas a nivel global, como los impactos del cambio climático, la pérdida de la biodiversidad, la contaminación del agua, del aire, el tema de la desertificación y sequía se está agravando, la inseguridad alimentaria, grandes pandemias y pandemias como el COVID-19 que amenazan la salud, el bienestar y la existencia de la humanidad. Quiero comentarles y quiero tomar estos minutos para plantearles que en América Latina, el Foro Indígena de Abya Yala y sus organizaciones miembros, con el apoyo de la cooperación internacional, el Banco Mundial, GIZ, Niatero, hemos realizado planes y atendido las necesidades del tema de COVID-19. Los planes se desarrollaron en Guatemala, en El Salvador, en Honduras, en Costa Rica, en Panamá, en Perú y Ecuador. Estos planes fueron fundamentales construirlos porque permiten mostrarle al mundo, mostrarle a los países y a los pueblos indígenas los impactos que estamos teniendo desde nuestra propia visión, desde nuestra propia realidad y desde lo que sentimos los pueblos indígenas. Estos planes plantearon que el COVID y el cambio climático están estrechamente relacionados con el impulso de un modelo de desarrollo moderno, que amenaza con destruir las diferentes especies y formas de vida existentes en nuestro planeta, del cual la humanidad no está exenta. Dichos impactos globales están afectando directa y negativamente a nivel territorial, a nivel local. Situación que amerita tomar decisiones a nivel global, pero basada en acciones locales. Esto es muy importante lo que dijeron los planes. Hay que seguir construyendo políticas internacionales, hay que seguir trabajando a nivel nacional, pero se deben hacer acciones a nivel territorial urgentemente. Si no hacemos esas acciones a nivel territorial urgentemente, nos estamos condenando. Esa es una de las conclusiones de los planes. Por tal razón es fundamental humanizar las economías y la equidad social de manera que busque el bien común y no solamente el crecimiento económico. Es momento de repensar, digamos, que estamos haciendo una acumulación de capital, que estamos generando economías, pero no estamos hablando del bien común. Y esto es fundamental. Los pueblos indígenas vienen desarrollando estos modelos. Dentro de este contexto, los pueblos indígenas, principalmente aquellos que presentan niveles de pobreza y pobreza extrema, hoy por hoy son los más expuestos al contagio del COVID. Ya lo dijeron los que me antecedieron. Asimismo, las consecuencias directas de la variabilidad climática y el cambio climático agudizan de esta manera las condiciones precarias en que vivimos, situación que es consecuencia de la exclusión, de la discriminación, de la marginación política y social económica, de la pérdida y expulsión que hemos sufrido de nuestras tierras y territorios, la violación de nuestros derechos colectivos, el desempleo, los índices de pobreza, situación de educación y salud son alarmantes en los territorios indígenas, al grado de convertirnos ahora en sectores vulnerables. Esto es muy difícil, quiero remarcarlo, porque ahora hablar de pueblos indígenas es hablar de sectores vulnerables, cuando los pueblos indígenas deberíamos de ser los motores del desarrollo, ¿sí? Entonces, yo creo que eso hay que repensar, las políticas deben repensarse, no podemos seguir siendo sectores vulnerables cuando realmente somos sectores que generamos y desarrollamos una vida en este planeta. Los planes plantean que no existe información desagregada sobre pueblos indígenas en el tema de COVID, ni en el tema de cambio climático. Se abordan cuestiones biofísicas en cambio climático, pero no se ven esos impactos en la cultura, en los idiomas, en los trajes que está afectando el cambio climático. Y hoy nos damos cuenta que el COVID, los estados no están desagregados. Si no tenemos una desagregación de cuántos hermanos han sido afectados directa e indirectamente, no podemos hacer una planificación. Eso es grave porque estamos haciendo una planificación sin saber hacia dónde vamos a dirigirnos. La poca información que existe sobre COVID y cambio climático no está en los idiomas indígenas, ¿sí? Entonces no está llegando la información. La falta de infraestructura de salud se agrava en los territorios indígenas. La atención no es adecuada culturalmente. Hoy COVID nos viene a mostrar y a reflejar esas desigualdades. Las mujeres que se hospitalizan no se les permite usar su traje. A esas abuelas que jamás han dejado de usar su traje, hoy se les está cambiando su vestimenta. Eso atenta contra la cultura. No se les permite utilizar la medicina indígena, ¿sí? Los hospitales que están en estas áreas, en estos países, no permiten que los pueblos indígenas usemos nuestra medicina. Y eso es alarmante, porque los pueblos indígenas lo que tenemos son nuestros sistemas de medicina, que han mostrado, y tenemos hermanos y casos, que se han curado de COVID con usar la medicina indígena, con practicar su espiritualidad indígena. Pero esto no se está permitiendo hoy por hoy. Entonces creo que es importante, digamos, hacer un alto y poder repensar, y por eso este foro es importante, porque permite, digamos, escuchar a los hermanos de África y de Asia, América Latina, expresar las mismas líneas, ¿sí? Las mismas preocupaciones. Entonces tenemos que sentarnos a ver. Los estados, digamos, los distintos actores y la sociedad civil tienen que reconocer que los pueblos indígenas históricamente han aportado sus ciencias, sus conocimientos, sus prácticas como alternativas de solución para enfrentar los impactos del cambio climático, la pérdida de los recursos naturales y en estos momentos para enfrentar la pandemia del COVID. Podemos poner ejemplos, ¿sí? Para mi caso, digamos, el calendario maya ligado a la medicina natural es una alternativa para curar COVID. Es una alternativa para enfrentar los impactos del cambio climático. Los planes dieron que los sistemas de terrazas andinas de los hermanos quechuas son una alternativa para los cultivos y por ende para garantizar la seguridad alimentaria de la región. Y escuchen, no estamos hablando solo de la seguridad alimentaria de los pueblos indígenas, estamos hablando de la región, ¿sí? Los pueblos indígenas siguen aportando a pesar de ser impactados. Estos sistemas indígenas, al igual que muchos, han permitido desarrollar prácticas de adaptación al cambio climático, en sinergia con acciones de mitigación a los gases de efecto invernadero, aunque estos contaminantes siguen en ascenso, siendo otro detonante para la destrucción del planeta. Es importante, digamos, ver qué está pasando con esos gases de efecto invernadero. Los países no quieren asumir su rol, no están poniendo en práctica el Acuerdo de París, ¿sí? Estamos haciendo una negociación del Plan Post-2020 en biodiversidad y nos damos cuenta que las metas de H están quedando por debajo de lo que vamos a plantear. No existe una meta para pueblos indígenas. Se está colocando entre la meta 19 los conocimientos tradicionales en el marco de la educación. Y no estamos diciendo que estamos en contra de la educación. Necesitamos una meta específica para pueblos indígenas. Entonces creo que es importante, digamos, ver eso. Y tal vez para ir viendo y ir finalizando, porque sé que el tiempo es corto, es fundamental también ver que hoy día convivir de forma armónica con la biodiversidad es fundamental, sabiendo que el 75% de las enfermedades nuevas emergentes que infectan a las personas provienen de animales, por efecto del SOIS, quienes les hemos dado, porque les hemos dañado su hábitat. Esos animales están saliendo de su hábitat porque les estamos quitando su hábitat, ¿sí? Entonces, también hay que discutir y analizar que ahora hay una línea de prohibir, digamos eso. Los pueblos indígenas hemos convivido, nos hemos alimentado de esas especies de forma equilibrada, de forma sostenible. Entonces, hoy por hoy tenemos retos, ¿sí? Que nos quieren prohibir cosas que atentan contra nuestra seguridad, contra vida y nuestros derechos. No podemos tener planes que no reconozcan ni tengan un enfoque de derechos, un enfoque de género y reconozcan los derechos de los pueblos indígenas. Realmente quiero finalizar diciendo que es momento de repensar dónde estamos llevando el planeta. No podemos atender COVID y descuidar cambio climático. No podemos atender cambio climático y descuidar biodiversidad. Debemos generar políticas integrales a nivel local, a nivel nacional y a nivel local. Matías Chivé, gracias.
Thank you very much, Ramiro, for your very important message that the business as usual will not work anymore. It has to be reflect back, and now it is time to think about it and think about indigenous people's voice, which need to be heard, because throughout the generation it has been undermining indigenous people cannot be just presented as a vulnerable communities, but in fact the role and contribution of indigenous people have a bigger role for saving the earth, for saving the biodiversity, for saving the ecosystem and the sustainable management of the resources. And totally agree with you that now it is time to take the paradigm shift. Now it's time to take the transformative change for the sustainability, for the peace and the harmony and the sustainable society, where the indigenous people voice to be heard and the Paris Accord to be respected for ensuring the rights of indigenous people, the rights for continuation of the traditional herbal medicines, uses of the healing practices, that to be respected, so that our knowledge, our value system will be continued and passed to the future generation. And once more, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge and experience on the ground, which is very, very important for all of us to hear. So now I go to our next speakers. I would like to invite our next speakers, Hortensia Hidalgo from Chile. She's an Aymara woman from northern Chile, a member of the Autonomous Council, a leader with an outstanding career in the promotion and defense of the fundamental rights of indigenous people, and also a member of Indigenous Peoples Women Biodiversity Network of Latin America and the Caribbean. So I would like to welcome Hortensia for your presentation. Over to you, Hortensia.
Muy buenas tardes. ¿Me escuchan bien? ¿Estoy compartiendo pantalla?
Yes.
Bueno, les saludo desde la región de Arica, Parinacota, del norte de Chile, frontera con Perú y Bolivia. El pueblo Aymara es un pueblo transfronterizo que está dividido entre Perú, Chile y Bolivia. Y los impactos del COVID en nuestro país y principalmente en la zona andina es bastante alarmante. Si ustedes ven aquí, son los casos confirmados que tenemos a nivel nacional. Además tenemos lamentablemente muchos casos fallecidos, que son 13.396 a la fecha. Arica y Parinacota es una región muy pequeña y que presenta cada día nuevos contagios. Nos encontramos en una fase 1 en esta región, donde aún estamos en cuarentenas, encerrados en nuestras viviendas. Además tenemos un estado de excepción que los militares resguardan el país durante la noche hasta la mañana. Nos encontramos en esa situación hoy día, donde nuestros derechos fundamentales lamentablemente se violan día a día, y para los pueblos indígenas ha sido lamentablemente un mal pasar. Llevamos casi 8 meses en esta situación de encierro y de no poder vivir como vivíamos antes, ¿no? Hemos tenido que cambiar nuestras formas de vida. Existen fronteras sanitarias que no nos hacen poder estar en comunidades. Tenemos cerradas las fronteras internacionales también. Como les decía, el pueblo Aymara es un pueblo transfronterizo, por lo tanto nuestras familias están en diferentes lugares. En mi caso, por ejemplo, yo no veo a mi papá meses, y mucha gente está en la misma situación. No hemos visto a nuestros familiares. pero aún así la resiliencia que tenemos los pueblos indígenas para enfrentar esta situación hace que esa resiliencia, que no es de ahora, que viene de muchos años para sobrevivir en esta sociedad, es que desde los conocimientos indígenas podemos hoy día alimentarnos. Por ejemplo, como les decía, esta situación que nuestros padres, nuestros abuelos hoy día se encuentran en las comunidades y no podamos visitarlos, hace que no podamos tampoco ayudarlos en el día a día, en lo que son sus siembras, en lo que son nuestro cuidado de los animales. Estamos divididos hoy día en estas fronteras sanitarias. Yo les quiero mostrar que desde el conocimiento indígena enfrentamos los efectos del cambio climático, enfrentamos también los efectos del COVID, en momentos como hoy día, que este año, por ejemplo, no hemos tenido buenas siembras porque no hemos tenido el capital humano, no hemos podido ir a sembrar todos y todas las que vamos todos los años, pero nosotros tenemos técnicas, como lo decía nuestro hermano Ramiro, técnicas ancestrales que hacen que nosotros tengamos nuestros alimentos por muchos años. Y este es uno de esos conocimientos indígenas que ayudan a aplacar los efectos del cambio climático y el COVID hoy día en nuestras comunidades. Esa es la flor de la papa, esas son papas, y ahí está mi papá y yo en la producción del año pasado, recogiendo las papas, y aquí están unos tipos de papas que hay, que las estamos recogiendo de la siembra. Y aquí está la tecnología andina. Esta tecnología son refrigeradores andinos que están en la tierra. Nosotros esas papas las dejamos meses. Esas papas son para semillas, para plantarlas este año. Y eso dura muchos meses ahí a ras del suelo. Es como un refrigerador en la parte andina. Bueno, ahí está enterrada la papa que va a durar muchos meses hasta que la podamos sacar y seleccionar. Ahí es, esa casita, esas son nuestras casas, ahí está nuestra casita que es la bodega de las papas. Ahí nosotros tenemos el tipo de papa que les voy a mostrar que con nuestra técnica ancestral dura más de 20 años y hoy día nos está alimentando. Este es el modelo de la papa, es una papa que nosotros cuando les mostré anteriormente la papa es sacada, esta papa es deshidratada. Esta papa es puesta en las laderas de los ríos o de los cerros, donde la deshidratamos. Noche y mañana la vamos pisando para así ir sacándole todo el líquido que tiene. Y así nosotros podemos tener, bueno, ahí están con los pies, es lo que hacemos en las noches y en las mañanas, donde cae la helada, lo más frío que hay, y esa papa queda casi congelada. Y es así que obtenemos esto, que es la papa chuño. Es un alimento necesario y diario en nuestra dieta alimentaria. Y producto de esta tecnología y de estos conocimientos indígenas que tenemos los pueblos indígenas, es que hoy día tenemos cómo alimentarnos y tenemos este tipo de papa que puede durar 20 años en nuestras bodegas, las casitas que les mostré recién, y es como estamos hoy día enfrentando. Gracias a nuestro conocimiento indígena podemos alimentar a toda la comunidad. Esas papas, si el próximo año seguimos en esta situación, tenemos también cómo alimentar a nuestra gente, y es que por eso nosotros no estamos tan preocupados en algunas comunidades de la alimentación, porque nuestros conocimientos indígenas nos han ayudado a tener hoy día nuestras bodegas llenas de estos alimentos. Tenemos nuestras papas por año. Bueno, otra cuestión, eso es dentro de las comunidades. Otra cuestión también que estamos realizando hoy día, gracias también a los programas que existen y al programa FCPF del Banco Mundial, este año a nivel nacional pudimos desarrollar lo que es el cambio climático, los bosques en tiempo de COVID y cómo los diferentes pueblos indígenas de Chile intercambiamos experiencias, conocimientos indígenas respecto a cómo nos estaba afectando, pero además principalmente en los temas de los bosques, cómo las personas que hoy día viven en los bosques se ven enfrentadas, y es que realizamos bastantes conversatorios virtuales, porque no nos podemos mover de los lugares, con nuestros hermanos de todos los pueblos indígenas de Chile, que fue una experiencia bastante buena, para lograr también intercambiar esos conocimientos indígenas, porque si bien yo le conté un conocimiento indígena que tienen los pueblos del norte de Chile, hay diferentes tipos, y bueno, también llevamos adelante la campaña nacional para la protección de los bosques indígenas, que es respeto a los derechos de los pueblos indígenas, es asegurar el futuro de la humanidad. ¿Y por qué les pongo esto? Porque una vez que pase toda esta situación del COVID, el gobierno de Chile plantea que para reactivar la economía se van a utilizar los bosques. Y es ahí donde está la gran preocupación de los pueblos indígenas. Más aún hoy día que enfrentamos los efectos del cambio climático, es como los territorios indígenas y los bosques van a ser lugares de sacrificio para reactivar la economía. Porque es cierto, la economía nacional está muy baja respecto a la inactividad que se ha tenido en el país y a la situación que estamos enfrentando día a día. Entonces, esas han sido un poco las conversaciones también respecto a este programa y de cómo también, pese a la pandemia, pese a que estamos encerrados en nuestros territorios, es que el extractivismo sigue. El extractivismo, el monocultivo sigue en nuestros territorios indígenas. Entonces, es que nosotros, los pueblos indígenas, pese a que tenemos conocimientos indígenas y hoy día estamos enfrentando, estamos asimilando esta situación, es cómo nos volvemos también a parar de esta situación, si bien es cierto somos resilientes por años, pero también nace lo que toda la vida hemos tenido, la reciprocidad, ¿no? Desde algunos lugares a otros lugares enviamos lo que son las mascarillas, alimentación para tener una alimentación más variable, y de esa forma tratamos de ayudarnos de pueblos en pueblos, porque hoy día lo que está sucediendo también son las ollas comunes en los barrios de los sectores donde hay poblaciones indígenas que no tienen que comer en las ciudades. En las ciudades los indígenas son los más pobres. En la parte rural tenemos como alimentarnos porque sobrevivimos con nuestra producción, pero en las ciudades, por ejemplo, donde la población indígena es más alta, es donde existe la inactividad económica, hace que esto. Bueno, y quiero terminar con eso. Quiero terminar con eso, agradeciendo el espacio y llamando a la reflexión también de que nuestros conocimientos indígenas pueden no solamente salvar a los pueblos indígenas, sino a la humanidad, y lo están haciendo hoy día con nuestras hierbas medicinales, por ejemplo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Hortensia, for your wonderful presentation. You have already shared and proved how indigenous peoples, they have their own knowledge system for the food insecurity, food security, and protection of their livelihoods, which need to be heard and which need to be understood from the before, in the trend of the food insecurity, the role and important role and contribution played by the indigenous people through their knowledge system. The pictures you have shown is very, very explicit examples already shown that how we have our own technology, how we have our own knowledge system that has been contributing, that has been protecting indigenous peoples for generations. These are which are very already losing because in the name of the development and technology, but your efforts through the different developments programs you have already started, and still the challenges are ahead because of the monoplantation, or because of the different modern education, different efforts that not to really acknowledge the indigenous people's efforts and knowledge system, which we really hope that this forum will also be useful for exchanging, for understanding how important the role and contribution of indigenous peoples for the protection of biodiversity, for the protection of the food security, and also the traditional healing practices that has also mentioned by our Romero, and also the important big contribution for sustainability of the whole humanity, that we need to think about it, and the business as usual model of the development will not work anymore. So with this one, I would like to thank all the panelists, all the speaker, wonderful presentation. I'm really sorry that we had a limited time. I had to cut. I had to stop you in the middle sometimes. I just realized that we could have even gone for hours and hours, but just the limitation of time. Now we are already so we'll have just one day where we have already. I would like to propose for extension of 10 minutes. So if we have any burning questions, I would like to give a couple of questions so that we can wrap up in 10 minutes. So is there any question? I would like to open the floor. My apology that we do not have much time for these open discussions that we wish to have. However, we have some time, and if you have any questions, even among the panelists, please put your raise your hands, or put yourself in the chat box, or just indicate yourself. Okay. I think we have a very good presentation that I do not see much any question. Yes.
There was a question from Clive. Maybe he could answer it live.
Yes, maybe, yeah. Clive, could you please show up yourself? Okay, maybe I'll read down. Okay. Clive, would you like to share
you
yourself?
can speak now. We've unmuted you.
Yeah.
Maybe he's still not there. He's no longer there.
Oh, okay, maybe I'll just.
Holly has a question. Go ahead, Holly. Holly, I unmuted you to be able to talk. You have to unmute yourself.
Maybe there has some system problem, or I don't know.
Yeah, we've given them permission to speak.
Yeah. Oh, is there anyone? I think, Christine, I think we can, if you have any queries in the future, you can, stay in touch through emails. The event will be happy to help you to reach out all the panelists if you have further queries. And now we are already at the end of the session, and then I would like to, just give maybe each seconds, from the panelists for your final way forward, like how we can move ahead through our, if you any recommendation for this this special group on indigenous peoples, on customary and environmental human rights, the spice of the CEESP. If you have any suggestion further that how we can enhance for all the indigenous peoples knowledge system, our cultural practices ahead, I would like to give you maybe 1 minute to all the panelists before we close. Anybody, panelists, Hortesia, Kamala, Ramiro, Funom, any thoughts for your suggestion, how we can move ahead? Thoughts for your?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. 1
Pastor,
minute.
can I?
Yeah, please.
Can I? Yes, thank you very much. So thank you very much again for the 1 minute way forward to put some concerns here. So regarding the, I have like a suggestion for the IUCN that because in Nepal, like in the Ministry of Forest and Environment is planning to expand national parks and conservation areas. So regarding on these issues that the having the existing national parks and conservation areas are harming our customary practices, harming our livelihood options, harming our the structural activities. So the concern is that the government is still going to be expanding protected areas and national parks, introducing militarizations where our indigenous women are facing lots of challenges, harassment, rape cases. So whether is this fear for indigenous peoples? So my concern is IUCN in Nepal is also there. So please from Nepal, IUCN, please give our government suggestion not to expand. With the existing national parks, it should be community-based national parks and conservation areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamala, for your suggestion. Now I would like to go back to Hortesia. Do you have any suggestion? Hortesia, Ramiro, Phonom, anyone?
Bueno, solo que con la misma resiliencia que hemos sobrevivido los pueblos indígenas a diferentes pandemias a través de los años, es que lo importante es que siempre se tomen en cuenta los conocimientos indígenas, porque los conocimientos indígenas son los que van a salvar a la humanidad de todo lo que está ocurriendo. Por lo tanto, es importante que los pueblos indígenas tengan participación plena y efectiva en todas las decisiones que se tomen y en todos los aspectos. Solo eso y muchas gracias.
Tal vez en...
Thank you, Hortesia. Okay, Ramiro, please go ahead.
Tal vez dos recomendaciones. Uno para la comisión. En primer lugar, digamos, seguir con estos diálogos y discusiones que son muy importantes. Sí, es fundamental, digamos, que se aborde este tema. Dos, es que la IUCN ya trabajó, digamos, un plan o un artículo, más bien dicho, sobre pueblos indígenas y COVID. Y es importante irlo actualizando, porque sabemos bien que el tema de COVID está, digamos, en constante evolución y es importante, digamos, seguir esto hacia allá. La comisión pues tiene toda la parte de política, la parte de economía y la parte social. Entonces creo que bien puede generar un proceso al seno de IUCN para que se discuta, justo lo que decía la hermana, que se discuta en las regiones el tema de una línea de trabajo de la IUCN sobre el tema de COVID fuertemente. Creo que eso es fundamental. Luego, una recomendación a los pueblos indígenas es a seguir manteniendo nuestras costumbres, nuestros derechos, seguir en práctica y poner en práctica, digamos, todo el modelo comunitarismo, todo ese modelo de uso, manejo y conservación de recursos, que esas son las alternativas para poder enfrentar, digamos, la crisis del cambio climático y la crisis del COVID. Gracias.
Thank you very much, Ramiro. Phonom, do you have any last thoughts?
Yes, thank you. I have one last comment or idea that I'd like to share. As I've heard from many panelists says the same, the problem that we faced during the COVID pandemic, which is the difficulty in access to information or lack of information, and some of our community can access to information but cannot distinguish which one is a fake news or fake information, and a lot of disinformation spread during the COVID times. Therefore, my suggestions are both to I myself, my organization at the country level, and also to IUCN. It would be great if we could have some kind of material or publications, or we think about the communication channel that we can establish for both way communication, bring up the news and good practice from indigenous community up to the society, and also deliver the facts and the good information to indigenous community effectively. This is my recommendation.
Thank you very much, Phonom. Christine, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I just wanted to add a comment. I think it's important to know that, so IUCN at its last Congress created a membership category for Indigenous Peoples organizations. and Ramiro's organization and Kenyike's organizations are both members of IUCN. And they have developed an Indigenous Peoples organization strategy for the, I think there's 22 members now, Ramiro and Kenyike. And part of the work that was done around COVID, which is on the IUCN website, was done at the impetus of the Indigenous member organizations. So I think one area of work is to be able, the Commission is happy to support, is to be able to work with the IUCN member organizations, which we can help share that communication with you. But just so that you know, there was a change in the IUCN categories for membership. So there is the possibility of organizations becoming members of IUCN. And as members, IUCN is a union, and the members influence what the union does, how its strategic approach is, and so forth. So I just wanted to highlight that for those of you who do not know, and perhaps we can do another session with many of the members and other Indigenous organizations who are interested and have raised issues such as the issues in Nepal and looking at the issues of traditional knowledge to be able to have a collective discussion about how to move some of these elements forward. So I just wanted to give that overview, a little bit of an overview and a clarification, but perhaps Ramiro and Kenyike, we can work on another session that would look at those issues.
Thank you very much, Christine, for your further information that how Indigenous peoples can continue engaging through different forums, and also being a members and also contributing for strategic for Indigenous people. And maybe we can continue the dialogue in the coming days too. Now we are almost at the end. Before I say goodbye, I would like to thank all the panelists for your wonderful, very enriching, very outstanding, very valuable presentation, bringing us all different countries, Asia, Africa, Latin America. Especially I'm really thankful towards Yvonne for her really, great contributions working behind the scene for providing technical assistance. And with this one, I would like to hand over to Kenyike Seda for his closing remarks. And with this one, I also would like to thank you very much. Yeah, Kenyike, the floor is yours. Over to you, Kenyike, for your closing remarks. Kenyike?
Yeah, thank you very much for this session. You've really done a very good job. Thank you, panelists, too, for the very beautiful presentations that have given us an overview of how COVID is impacting on Indigenous peoples in different parts of the world. I think that was very, very important. And when you look at all the presentations, though COVID has impacted Indigenous peoples differently. For example, it has impacted Indigenous peoples more in Latin America than in Africa. We see that the strategies that have been developed by both Indigenous peoples and their respective governments are almost similarly the same. So we need to actually continue enhancing the sharing of information and ideas. For example, in Hortensia, we really like that food preservation strategy. I think we should adopt some of those discussions. We have also seen that through COVID, there is a movement back to traditional knowledge, traditional medicine, traditional foods. And Indigenous people are increasingly looking inside for solutions rather than looking outside for solutions, which is a very, very good way of promoting Indigenous self-determination. So I'll take this opportunity to thank you all once again for your time. I know it has taken longer than we had planned, but thank you so much and welcome again. And I think, Kristen, that the next one we should focus on sharing the strategy. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And with this one, Kristen, do you have anything to anything at the last? Okay.
No. Stay tuned for some more. I've given some links in the chat to the CEESP page and also the Facebook page, and we'll be circulating more events. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kenyike, Pasang, Eben, and Yeshing, who couldn't be with us today, for organizing the event.
Yeah, thank you
and to our
very much.
translators.
Yeah, translators. Oh my goodness, without this one. think all the reason. Yeah, thank you, translator, for your wonderful hard work. Without you, perhaps we could not have joined through all this reason and make possible to have all connection of the all three regions. And with this one, and I once again thank you very much, and looking forward to joining again. And continue our work and discussions collectively, and for our dignity and self-respect, to saving the earth and saving the planet and saving for our future generation. With this one, I think we close the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you and bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, see, all the friends. Yeah. Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you.
Ciao. Thank you. Yeah.
Saludos,
Thank you.
gracias.
Yeah. Thank you, Ramiro. Yeah. Hi, Iben. Thank you. Thank you. Good. Yeah. Thank you.